And welcome back, guys, to an episode of Geek Centurions. It's me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
And we're here to talk about Wakanda Forever. Basically Black Panther 2.
Yeah, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever.
And you know how usually it is. It's we got to give one of the reviews before we talk about that. This is the most recent film from Marvel. It's the last one of the year. An end to Phase 5, as they say. 4?
Yeah, Phase 4. We're getting ahead of ourselves.
We're getting ahead of ourselves.
You know?
I'm thinking about 3 years later. But yeah, so this is the end of this phase. And this is, I think this is the last comic book movie of the year.
I think it might be.
Yeah. And this is the first movie with no Chadwick Boseman, as we unfortunately lost him in 2020 due to his battle with cancer.
It was, I believe, colon cancer.
Yeah, it was colon. So this movie, and I'll say this right now before we get into our our 1 minute reviews. This impacts it very much well. But yeah, this is the recent film from Marvel Studios. Ryan Coogler is directing it. Best known for Creed, Fruitvale Base Station, and the first Black Panther. So a lot of the things I just said are going to be very key into what we're going to talk about in our review and our later discussion of the movie. So just a heads up, do you want anything to add before we talk about our review?
Not really. No, I think we can jump in because I think I can talk a bit more about this movie because I really, not to give much away, but I really did like how well this movie was made. So yeah, we can start the 1 minute review.
Yeah, I mean, also we have forgot to mention this is our introduction to Namor, who in the comics is the first mutant and all that good stuff, King of Atlantis. So there's a lot of interesting things going on in this movie. I'll say I was at first concerned on whether or not they were able to make it, but it looks like they did.
Yeah, because I think it was there was a lot of rumors of how they were going to handle Namor in this movie.
I had issues.
Yeah, I think we had an episode where we talked about some of the new designs or whatever, and we were very much like, can this work? You know, kind of thing. And again, not to give too much away, but I think it turned out pretty well.
All right, Joy. So now we're going to start our 1 minute reviews. As you know, this is how it works. We give our 1 minute thoughts on the film. At the end of the episode, we give our full thought, our review of it. Or
we go a bit more deeper on certain topics and stuff. Yeah.
So this is gonna be the quick nitty gritty of what our thoughts on the movie is, and then we go into an explanation. At the end of the episode, we tend to give our score. So Joy, you start us off.
All right. So Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is probably one of the most anticipated sequels because of the circumstances surrounding Chadwick Boseman, and sort of like the question of who gets to pick up the role of the Black Panther. And yeah, it's a film that very much delves in sort of the grief process as a whole. All these characters, are very affected by the passing of of T'Challa, and they have to move on and go, figure out some way to like keep together as there's like a new threat. I really like the story that was told, the various themes that the movie had. I think the one thing I would say about the movie that I felt like could have been a bit better was the CGI, but that seems to be sort of a growing trend with recent Marvel stuff. But overall, I really enjoyed the movie, and I think it's a very solid sort of conclusion of the Black Panther story so far.
All right, you made it just in time. All right, so it's my turn to say. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever is a movie that deals with grief, and it is written with shades of the passing of Chadwick Boseman. You can tell that when writing this movie, that the passing of Chadwick Boseman was in the minds of the writers, and even in the actors themselves. There are moments where you will see almost them talking about T'Challa, but you can kind of see it being more about Chadwick, and that's sort of the biggest compliment I have for the movie. Tecno Huerta's Namor is probably one of the best characters to put on screen, brought into life with the ideas of Mayan culture. And yeah, no, this is one of the more emotional Marvel movies. I think it's going to be up there in one of the best Marvel films since maybe Infinity War and Endgame, if you would like to argue that. Maybe No Way Home. And this movie deals a lot with emotional grief, and that's the strongest point of this film. And I'll talk about that more now. So, where do you want to start?
Let's start, I think, No, let's. I think we can definitely start with sort of like yeah, how all the characters sort of deal with T'Challa's passing.
Hmm.
Because that's like definitely one of the
So the
like we
movie literally starts off with like them trying to, literally the funeral of T'Challa. That's where the movie begins. This is a time of mourning, and so everyone's getting together and sort of, you know, taking their time to grieve. And obviously, when it comes to grief and when you lose a loved one, it does not take, very long for someone to be in an emotional state. And oftentimes that's it takes them a while to cope with that. And that is the central theme throughout this movie.
yeah, because Shuri's whole character arc is very much in sort of that style of like I could I try my best to save my brother because they don't say how he dies, but it's
No.
it's due to some form of illness,
Mm-hmm.
which I think it harkens back to what you're saying. Like there's shades of like actual real life
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to how how they talk about T'Challa's character, and it may being related a lot to Chadwick Boseman. And yeah, she sort of gets sort of more or less. She hunkers down and just works in her lab, and that's sort of her way of coping. But her mother, the Queen Ramonda, has sort of had to, claw, get back, be on the throne again, and having to deal with a lot of the international stuff that goes on. Obviously, she's very much like, you people still want our vibranium. That's not gonna happen.
Not under my watch.
Yeah, not under my watch. Our king, our Black Panther is gone, but just because he's gone doesn't mean Wakanda is weak. We will continue to be who we are, and that's sort of her way of kind of like having to process her grief is to try to be the strong leader of Wakanda and like sort of move forward with the memories of her son with her and stuff.
And it's funny, like we were talking about how, this was written with shades of Chadwick Boseman's passing, and so, there's a lot of things where you're like, oh, that's basically Chad. They wrote that, like I said, we were talking about like he died of mysterious disease. They don't specify what it is, but like if you think of Chadwick, because it starts off with an homage to Chadwick, like the Marvel Studios logo starts, going all, in honor of Chadwick Boseman. And then you're like, oh, this is that moment. Okay, I know what you guys are doing. You didn't have to explain. You just gotta know, like, yeah, this is. It doesn't really matter how he died, and not how he died, like what was the name of the disease, but it's all about people's, going through the grieving process, right? Accepting and all this stuff. Because like every character that has an attachment to T'Challa has spoken about T'Challa in a way that, whether or not it was written that way, but like it's written like, yeah, this is, we miss him. This is what he meant to us. And now I feel like not only was that the characters themselves saying that, but it was the actors themselves as well. Because there are moments where I'm like, oh, that is such a good emotional moment. And then it's like, oh, there's a moment where I'm like, it was with Winston Duke's character where he's talking to Shuri about, what his brother meant to her. And there was a moment I'm like, man, I feel like he's also talking about Chadwick. So it's like I'm not kidding when I say there are moments where like, this is written with Chadwick in mind.
Yeah, and I believe that helps to give out a lot of good performances because I feel oftentimes when it comes to acting and stuff, a lot of actors sort of like try to get themselves in sort of the mind of how they want to do it, or like try to get themselves like they think about things to like get themselves in the right emotion for the scene, and obviously when it comes to a good chunk of this movie, I definitely feel like a lot of the actors sort of brought their A game mainly because they're sort of thinking, they had Chadwick's death in mind. I believe it feels like it's like both they and the characters are both grieving through the passing of for the actors a great friend, a colleague, and for the character's beloved icon.
Yeah.
So it causes that sort of like interesting sort of like melding of like what is where does like the movie, where does like the acting end and when does the real emotions come out?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of moments where it does feel like, okay, this feels kind of like seriously kind of like a genuine reaction, especially in that beginning sequence when it's sort of like, when like the news is laid out.
It's like, oh shit.
Yeah, it almost feels like they essentially recreated themselves, having to like themselves learning about what happened.
Yeah, because when Chadwick passed away, no one knew. No one from Marvel knew.
Well, yeah, no one at Marvel. I think most of the actors didn't know that he was battling cancer, because he never really wanted to bring it up.
Mm.
He didn't want people to worry about it, which I mean it's very very admirable. I guess for you don't want like your colleagues or your friends.
And ironically, there's a moment where even like there's a moment where like he didn't want you guys to know about this thing, so we kept it in secret. But it's so you'll see when we get there. But like this is such an honor to him, and I know some people were at first were wondering, and damn, it's really hard. We're wondering like, oh, is this going to be exploiting of Chadwick's death? But it's not. It is probably one of the most like emotional things we've seen from a comic book movie.
Yeah, like it definitely there is a lot of emotion to it.
But there's also a lot of honoring. Like, this is what he meant to us. Like, this is what he meant to, now fans of not only of Black Panther, but as an icon for a community.
Yeah, and as well as like everyone on set probably, they all sort of were like, like, yeah, this sort of like this movie is basically for Chadwick. So it's very I definitely can see sort of that, all that stuff getting played out through how the characters respond in various situations throughout the movie. Yeah.
Yeah, we're about to get emotional right now. I can feel it. The weather itself is crying.
Oh yeah, if I mean, granted you can't see it in the video version, but you might be able to hear in the audio. There is quite a bit of rain happening outside.
Rain's getting crazy now.
Yeah.
But let's move on to an introduction of a new character. Namor, played by Tecno Huerta. Hope I said that right. I know. So it's a very interesting name for someone in Mexico. So obviously, they changed Namor to be more Mesoamerican in this adaptation, and in the same way, I feel that people felt that the first Black Panther was very honoring of African culture, and a lot of the things that went into it, the design. God damn, do I feel that way with this one? Personally, me as someone who is from that culture.
Of Latin America.
Yeah,
like it is because I think at the time when we were hearing these rumors of how Namor was being planned out and stuff, it was very sort of like can this work? Because I think I remember at the time I was saying like, I feel like half the reason why they're doing it is to sort of like differentiate Namor from Aquaman,
and they did do that, and they did it in a way where it's like very unique to it and make it very different than say what Aquaman was. Because I think Aquaman gave you like the very cool, distinct look, while Namor gave you the culture. Like, you felt that was very like culture bound. There's a lot of stuff that was like, oh yeah, I know, I can relate to this. I see a bit of myself in this.
Yeah, it's sort of kind of cool just seeing sort of the set design and like how the costumes look, because it's just seeing it all in like in motion definitely is pretty cool. And Namor himself is a very interesting character.
Yes, I feel he's a little more sympathetic in this than in the comics, because like, I'm gonna be honest, in the comics Namor's a fucking dick.
Yeah, like he is like a textbook anti-hero sort of a character. He's very much like, he's does things his own way, he sort of like kind of has it out for the surface world. You know, he wants to protect his own.
He has killed enough people to be like, nah, dude, we ain't cool.
Yeah.
Like that's how bad he can be. It's like it's funny because in the comics, I can't remember was it if it was an event or not, but he did also like drown Wakanda at one point.
Like just cause like a giant like tsunami or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah. Okay.
It's like, man, you an ass.
Yeah, and you know, they do of course drop the one like major lore bit of Namor.
Mm-hmm.
They sort of they put that in the movie. Like he straight up just says it. If you know what we're talking about,
You'll know.
you'll know. So yeah, it's neat to know that that's pretty much out there, straight up. Yeah, because you know they've been teasing stuff about that certain part of the Marvel universe, and now to just have it just straight up be out there,
Mm-hmm.
just fully, just yeah, we might be getting. I fully expect within like maybe a year or two from now, some major stuff on that side of the Marvel universe to be announced. But yeah, that's just me.
No, I totally agree. I think also the cool thing about it is that like I said, they really put attention to detail and a lot of stuff like that. Like they even had their own little like Wakanda Forever where they cross their arms.
Yeah, like their own little like salute. Like
Yeah.
the Wakandas do this for like the Wakanda Forever thing. Namor and his sort of people have their own sort of like gesture or salute kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like people have called it a Kamehameha.
Yeah, because it's like they do their hands like
Yeah.
that, like as a greeting, like oh yes, do this, yeah. I think you can see it online on like social media and all that.
Yeah,
stuff.
they've talked about it before. I think it goes by like Liketulukan.
Yeah, which also that is an interesting thing because they are sort of very like Mayan inspired, so they speak.
They're not Aztec, they're Mayan.
Yeah, there is a difference.
Yeah.
So they speak that language, the Mayan language. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of neat to have like. Now, granted, I don't know how accurate it is.
Yeah.
But it does seem like they probably went out of their way to try to make it sound a little authentic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, granted, obviously, I don't know the Mayan language.
No, we're not from that part of Mexico.
No.
We're a little north above it, and then there's also the northern. Quick note, if you guys don't know, there's a lot of different tribes, ancient, like old, I wouldn't say tribes, but like...
There's a lot of different, like, Mesoamerican cultures that were around within, like, from Mexico to, like, Central America stuff.
Mm-hmm.
The Mayans were very like near the Yucatan Peninsula, like the southern border, like stuff like very rainforesty. While like say the Aztecs were more in like the central part of Mexico.
Yeah.
And then you got like shit like the Toltecs.
Then there's the Olmecs.
And that's just like they built the giant heads. What's up with that?
Yeah, and then you got the Nahuas that are up all the way. The Nahuas that are up in north.
Yeah, so yeah, it is obviously.
But I do like the fact that there's at least attention to detail that know like, hey, these are Mayans. These are this is where they're at.
Yeah.
This is where they at. This is their call sign now. Which I like. I also kind of find it funny how everyone was, I guess earlier we were complaining about like, oh, it's just Kamehameha. Bro, they made Dragon Ball Z super popular in Mexico right now. Goku's basically Mexican.
Well, that is sort of a running joke within the Dragon Ball community. But yeah, I do think. Granted, I'm not sure. I would find it very funny if Ryan Coogler's like, "Oh yeah, that was intentional. Don't worry about it."
No, it was made by the actors.
Oh, the actors themselves.
Yes, so they're like, we need our own, and so they came up with that. And I'm just in my mind like, oh come on, well, we all know why you did that.
No, listen, they haven't said it yet because obviously Toei is gonna sue them for copyright.
Fair enough. So we won't talk about it.
Yeah, so listen, Toei likes to destroy anything that even like tries to do anything with Dragon Ball Z stuff. I mean, look what happened to those Dragon Ball Z Abridged guys.
And that's when we're done. Next thing you know, they're gonna shut us down. But yeah. Namor, like I said, he's much more sympathetic in this one, while still being kind of an ass.
He's definitely the antagonist, but he's not a villain.
He's not. He is an antagonist.
They give him very understandable motivation for why he is very much against the surface world, and also like like if you're not with me, you're against me, kind of thing.
Yeah, because it all comes back down to like the idea of like, these people want our resources. Help me stop them. No, we can't be involved. Well, then screw you.
Yeah.
And so that's basically Namor's like whole character arc. But it's like also a little more deeper as to like why he is the way he is, why he has no trust for those of in the surface world, which I'm like, all right, that's cool. That's cool. Another character they introduced was Riri Williams, who is sort of the female Iron Man. Well, she's not the first one, but she is the current popular one.
Yeah, I was gonna say she is a. She's definitely one of the newer characters that was introduced in Marvel a couple years ago, right? Like at least
2014, 2015.
Yeah, so she's definitely a newer age hero, and her whole thing is that she is a college student that pretty much is super smart, has like pretty much kind of figured out how to make her own like little Iron Man suit. And she will be getting her own show on Disney Plus, Ironheart, that comes out. I have no idea when, but it's gonna come out. But yeah, she was interesting.
So I think we both had this idea that she might be shoehorned in, considering how much like stuff was going on. But I think you said it yourself, she was actually integrated really well into the story.
Yeah, because like they give a decent explanation as to one, why she's in the movie, and more or less two, of like, okay, I can see how she's willing to like be here and like her whole thing. Because granted, while I don't know much about her from the comics, because she's a newer age character on the level of like say Miss Marvel and stuff.
She's a little later than Miss Marvel, but like when her introduction, she's kind of has like a similar idea. Well, where like she kind of figured out how to do art, Stark Tech. She kind of like I don't remember. Did she hack? Like Tony discovered her and he was like impressed. That's all I remember. And that's when like he took her under his wing, and then like Tony kind of quote unquote died, or coma. And she became the Invincible Iron Man. Well, kind of. Her name was Ironheart, but the book was called The Invincible Iron Man. And I swear, like the first time she showed up, it was like featuring Ironheart. I'm like, that's lame.
Yeah, like I guess if you wanted to like promote a new character, just give her own like comic book series, not have her be like just sort of hanging out while Iron Man's in a coma.
Well, no, it's like she's supposed to be the main character,
but it's still called
The Invincible Iron Man.
Yeah.
And then I swear the first issue was like featuring Ironheart. So it was still under his number.
Yeah.
So like it was like weirdly carried by Iron Man.
Yeah.
When it's supposed to be her own book.
Because because I know. I do like. Yeah, I think I said earlier. I do like how she's sort of integrated.
Yeah.
And I do feel like
she's not as annoying as I thought she might be, because there's always that inkling that like, because like she looked like she was gonna be forced in onto this movie, or like like how are you gonna fit her in? Oh, I hope she doesn't become like an annoying sidekick, and she's not. She's a very like enjoyable character, and she's a lot of fun to be with.
Yeah, I would say that she's very like I think they do quite a bit to like make it seem like realistic. I mean, I guess in terms of a comic book universe of like, oh yeah, no, she was able to like sort of not reverse engineer, but sort of just figure out how these things could work. Because I think when we see her like first iteration of her like little Iron Man suit, it's slightly more advanced. It's not even like how Tony used like first Iron Man suit. It's just kind of like the framework of like a flight suit with like a little gun, and then obviously like she gets a little bit more help from the Wakandans to make a much more cooler, better suit. So yeah, that is sort of an interesting thing of like having her be there, and like I said, not being like super forced, which I think that works, especially for a character that is going to get their own like sort of a spin-off show. And I do wonder how interesting they'll handle that, considering sort of the events of what happens with her at the end of the movie. regarding like just her status and like
Mm-hmm.
kind of like how hey, she went off the off the radar for a little bit.
I wonder what happened to her.
Yeah, it's like, and she's back now. Okay, what happened, Riri?
Yeah, but I will say they at least established her genius level intellect.
Yeah, like I feel like there might be some people out there being like, she's a just college student, just learns how to freaking build her own Iron Man suit. This is ridiculous, and it's like, well, remember what a certain Obadiah Stane once said? How the hell did Tony Stark build this Iron Man suit in a cave with a bunch of scraps?
This is fucking Iron Man.
Yeah, because he was fucking smart, and yeah, Riri's pretty smart too.
Mm-hmm. So obviously, I think that's about much we can say about Riri. Anyone else? Obviously, I think we can talk about, why am I forgetting her name?
Shuri.
Shuri. Holy crap! I think her and her mom are the central point characters, but I think this is mostly Shuri's story. I think I have enough reason to back that up.
Oh no, yeah, definitely. She is definitely the main character here.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think I may have mentioned it earlier, but it is more or less her having to struggle with sort of the loss of her brother, and she's mainly just sort of cooks herself in the lab, but at the same time she sort of just
she doesn't want to deal with it anyways, and she doesn't want to do it by the means of how others have done it.
Yeah, because she's not very she's very analytical, intelligent person, and she's trying to handle it in that way, but her mother and various other people are just trying to hey, do it through through our traditions and that sort of thing.
There's a reason we have it.
Yeah, she's always been that sort of character that doesn't really care much for the traditions of her of Wakanda and stuff. Even in the first movie, she's always been
well, it's that line that Winston M'Baku has said that's kind of a bit of a meme, but also came back. Became sort of the antithesis of her character arc, is that she's someone who scoffs at traditions.
Mm-hmm.
A child that scoffs at, so she herself does not really believe in these traditional ideals, but her mother does, and how she's used it to help her cope with the loss of her son. And Shuri does not have that.
Yeah, because I think there is a moment where she's like, "Oh, Queen Ramonda was like, hey, this is what I do, just to cope with it, and I'm gonna, we're gonna burn the funeral clothes and stuff."
And she herself's being more analytical about it. It's no, you didn't.
That's not, it's not. It wasn't. Oh, I can hear your brother in the wind and all. It's no, that's not. It's not really T'Challa. That was just your mind just sort of constructing a way to cope.
And I'll be honest. I was like, man, can you just let her cope?
Yeah, her son, your brother died. I get. Why can't you just let her have that? But at the same time, it's this character.
That's who she is, though.
Yeah, she's a very analytical person, and she herself is having a hard time trying to cope.
Yeah,
and it's not going well for her.
Yeah, and especially since if you think about the opening scene with her, and how it's pretty much that makes sense as to why you are the way you are, and why you choosing to maybe not to be as open up as your mother has been with the passing. And obviously, Angela Bassett's character, Queen Ramonda, god damn, does she knock it out of the park in some scenes.
Yeah, no, like I said, I feel like she the most has a lot of those scenes referencing or mentioning T'Challa, and she uses that sort of to give it an extra 110% in some of her scenes.
Yeah, It's she steals. I think she's basically stole the show for a lot of the actors. I'm not saying the actors couldn't keep up with her, but it's damn, you know what? Just go.
Yeah.
Take the steam. I don't care. What? She did not care what the dialogue was. She took it and made it her own.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, good lord, that was a scene. You'll know when you get there. Trust me. And I was for Shuri, this is her moment to really, grow as a character. Because like I said, she has to deal with the passing of her brother, but also what kind of responsibilities does that leave her with, right?
Mm.
And she is stuck into her work and like chooses to focus on that more than anything else. But she's like the main protagonist of the story. It's her changing into essentially becoming more of an adult and taking on some of those responsibilities that were left behind by her brother.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a certain scene that really encapsulates that. And I won't say, but you'll know when you see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what else is there to talk about? I feel.
I'll be honest. It's hard for me to think of a negative. If we were to go talk about any negatives, like the movie, it's a long movie. I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely is a long movie.
But you don't feel it.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it slightly earlier in my 1 minute review. The CGI is probably kind of, I would say, maybe a low point, because there are a couple of scenes where it does look kind of off. There was one where I'm pretty sure they're readying up for the final battle, essentially against Namor and stuff. And it's just this, like a overhead like group shot of like all these warriors, and it definitely, I'm like, yeah, that's that definitely looks a little bit unfinished. But yeah, it's sort of like, I think, somewhat of a continuing trend within some of the MCU movies and stuff, and I'm not sure how, if we brought it up before, but it is sort of seems like a kind of like the consequences of potentially overworking the various animators and designers and all those guys that like help create all the CGI. So that is going to be, I think that's probably the reason, but I wouldn't say it's as jank as the first Black Panther movie, because that first one definitely had.
Yeah, the first one was rough at points, especially towards the end.
Yeah, especially the end between T'Challa and Killmonger. That fight scene, boy oh boy, was the CG. I think that was probably the first time when Marvel's CG department did not carry the ball well.
They did not. But yeah, I think that might be the only really even then it's still a nitpick really. But yeah, no, this movie is like, it's one of the best Marvel movies in a long time.
Yeah, I would probably say, like, looking back at all the Phase 4 movies we've had, it's definitely up there.
Yeah, it's one of the best ones in a long time. I think it's also one of the ones that were like, if you feel like Marvel movies, and granted, I feel like we've been a little nice towards some of the Marvel movies, but I feel like this is the one that makes you go like, no, this is the quality of Marvel I remember having, being like, really good movies and really enjoyable as well. And I'm glad that Black Panther still continues that trend with the quality of these movies. And like I said, it's very emotional. There were points where even in our theater, some people were crying. Like they were actually tearing up. You almost teared up.
Yeah, especially because definitely towards the end.
Yeah, watch the mid-credit scene.
The mid-credit scene definitely gets you. I mean, it got me a little bit. So yeah, it's definitely the one scene that is very much, oh yeah, this movie, there was a specific sort of thing with this movie that they were going for, and this is sort of the apex. This is the crescendo moment.
Yeah, no, if like we were saying, this is in honor of Chadwick, and it ends in a way that's like, that's one hell of a way to honor him. And not only just him, but also the character. They did a good job. So what would you score this movie then?
I would say, looking at it,
Mm-hmm.
I think I would give it a. I think I'm gonna go with like a 9 out of 10.
I'm with you there, dude. 9 out of 10. I'm always hesitant to get to like a 10 out of 10, but like a 9 out of 10. This is a real good 9 out of 10. This is one that I feel like, like I said, one of the best Marvel movies. Like for me, Winter Soldier and Infinity War, Endgame, No Way Home, and this one are probably one of my top five, Marvel movies. Not to rank them, but like, just for me, this is like one of the best movies I've seen from, Marvel Studios, and just one of the best comic movies in general. So yeah, no, that's for me. Do you have any reasons for you?
No, yeah, I think I agree there. It just a lot of the it. No, I don't think the movie because even if say Chadwick Boseman, was still alive, but for whatever reason could not continue to be T'Challa anymore, so they wrote it to be that he dies in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I with that in mind, I still think the movie works. I feel like for some people, maybe they're like, "Oh, it's just because the only reason people say this movie is because of Chadwick Boseman's death," And while I could maybe see that point in terms of like it enhances the performer's acting in certain scenes, removing that context, I still think this movie just has so much like weight, emotional weight to it.
Mm-hmm.
That they really sort of go all out on that stuff, and like getting such a compelling character with Namor and having him be the antagonist and sort of that sort of divide. Like see the opposing forces between Namor and the Wakandans and stuff is a really interesting thing to see. And yeah, and so over on the whole, yeah, it's a very very good movie, and I really enjoyed it.
It makes you think about the time when people were like recast T'Challa, right? And obviously people like Ryan Coogler, Kevin Feige were like, we're not going to replace him. It's too soon, and we don't want to do that for Chadwick. And this is the reason why, because they wanted to honor him in a way that really like spoke to not only the character he played, but like what he meant to a lot of other people. And I've said this, obviously we said this a bunch of times, that this is what the movie's about. And thankfully they were able to pull that off in a way that made a lot of them, they gave us a lot of great emotional moments, and made us feel that we have honor, that a good way to honor this man who's no longer with us. And it's just a really great celebration of this man who is like I said, no longer with us.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that's the episode. This has been really fun to talk about. That's the end of the comic movie stuff. We might come back to talk about this stuff either way still. But if you enjoy what you heard, be sure to follow us on all social media sites: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the Geek Centurions. We're most active on Instagram, and on there you'll find a link to all the podcast sites we're officially part of, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, all the like. And we'll link to the YouTube for all you audiences out there who want to put a face to the voice, and a link to the Patreon, which is really just there just to support us in a different way. And yeah, that's it. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. Go watch it. That's all I gotta say.
Mm-hmm.
That is a movie that you definitely should go watch. And yeah, that's it. It's been me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
You guys have a good one. Peace.